Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this second episode of our webinar series, Behind the Scenes with Lion Landscapes. We are very grateful to have you all join us. My name is Paul Subi. I'm the communication assistant at Lion Landscapes, based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I will be your host for today. Our guest speakers will be BenJee Cascio, who is Director of Conservation Programs across all project sites, and Gabriel Nyausi, Project Community Manager in Laikipia. In the last webinar, we talked about Lion Landscape's strategic plan, focusing on the theory of change and the three main pillars of our work, that is, stop the loss, reduce the cost, and unlock the benefits. We've learned that to reach long-term coexistence between humans and often dangerous wildlife, it's not enough to just reduce the cost of living along this wildlife. Communities need to see net benefit. Today, we'll be exploring how Lion Landscapes is working to increase these benefits, and we'll be focusing on the community camera trapping CCT program and how this has evolved into our new CCT Plus agreements with local communities. This program has now been implemented in 3 landscapes, and we'll explore how it is adapted to local situations and what benefits are prioritized by the communities. This will be done in form of a few questions that I will be asking the speakers directly. To our attendees, you too will have an opportunity to engage our speakers by typing your questions in the Q&A feature. We will answer as many of these questions as we can after the first session. Please note that we'll be only answering questions in the Q&A feature. By the end of this webinar, we hope to give a good introduction to how Lion Landscapes makes large carnivore conservation valuable to local and global communities. Welcome. BenJee and Gabriel, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to listening to the fascinating stories you'll be telling us. BenJee, we'll get started with you. Can you please introduce yourself and your role at Lion Landscapes?
Sure. Thank you very much, Paul. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever our attendees may be. As Paul said, my name is BenJee Cascio. I'm the Director of Conservation Programs for Lion Landscapes. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin in America, though I've spent my entire professional career outside of the US working with mainly NGOs. My background is actually with community development, working a lot with governance, and I've been lucky enough to intersect with conservation. I've been in Tanzania for the past 10 years and with Lion Landscapes for the last 5. As Paul said, as the Director of Conservation Programs, helping to coordinate and manage our programs across our different sites in Kenya, Zambia, and Tanzania.
Thank you, BenJee. Now, can you explain why it is important to create tangible benefits for communities living with wildlife?
Sure, Paul, thank you. So I think one of the major pillars that we have is reducing the cost. And there are massive costs of living alongside wildlife. And I think when many people in the West think about, lions and elephants, they think of, these beautiful animals on the savannah. And it's very difficult sometimes to understand when these animals are in your backyard, they have incurred massive cost on those living adjacent to protected areas. So I have 2 examples here. One is of a carcass of a cow that was killed by a lion. And, I know the image is a bit graphic. I apologize for that. But I think I can explain about how many of these pastoralist cultures, they have a lot of both cultural and economic value in their livestock. But also looking at just the horrific imagery of what that looks like when a lion attacks a cow and rips it open. And I mean, there's even an unborn calf there. And, this cow has great value, as I said, both culturally and economic to this livestock owner. So it's really important that they also know that there's something good coming from this wildlife. The second example I have is actually, it's an elephant taken from a camera that's part of our community camera trap program. And this elephant is within 1 kilometer from maize fields. And this photo was actually taken last month, which is, we're in the middle of, or towards the end of our rainy season now during harvest time. And this elephant is likely, going straight towards those crops. And for many of the people in our work area, these crops are their entire livelihood. And so I think it's really important to keep this perspective that if we are asking local communities living next to wildlife to engage in conservation, we need to recognize first that there is a massive cost that many of them are incurring. And so that's why I think it's really important to ensure that there are tangible benefits for living alongside wildlife.
Very well, well illustrated. Once again, yes, apologies for the graphic images. Now, the latest article, the latest newsletter rather, mentioned that earlier benefits programs have not always directly associated the benefits received with the presence of wildlife. Why was this so, and how did Lion Landscapes turn this situation around? BenJee.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, this is there are a lot of organizations, both government, non-government, that are involved in some kind of benefits programs for communities around protected areas, or even those that are kind of community managed areas. But a lot of times what we've seen is that people don't associate those benefits with the wildlife. They're often seen as just another type of community development, a type of kind of charitable contribution. It's really important to look at the appropriateness and the equitability of benefits. And then as well, the level of local control. Because I think if many times decisions are made for the community about what they can use these benefits for, or that maybe an organization thinks that they should just refurbish the school or pave part of the road, I think you're missing some of these key points that really help to engage the community to feel ownership and make that connection between living with the wildlife and those costs and these benefits, which will help to increase positive attitudes and tolerance towards wildlife, which I think are really critical pieces to engaging people in conservation.
Thank you, BenJee. Talking of communities, tell us more about the role of communities in CCT, the community camera trapping programs.
Yeah, as I mentioned, a huge part of our program and about ensuring that people really understand that the links between benefits and conservation in the presence of wildlife is making sure that they're the benefits that people want, things that are equitable, things that are appropriate. I'm continually surprised at sometimes the benefits that are requested. And the involvement with the community started at the very beginning. It started with this discussion even of saying, what are the benefits that the community does want? And initially these discussions, people come with, oh, we need a new health center and we need more teachers. And obviously there's a limit to what we can provide funding wise. But we listened to the community as they defined their different sectors that they felt touched all of the community. Because although we focus on carnivores, as I mentioned, those elephants are there are a lot of farmers, and we still want to assign value to all of the wildlife because it's all connected in the ecosystem. So when we engaged the community with this, they chose different sectors. Catherine, do you mind putting those up? One is education, one is through pastoralists, one is health, and then recently we added the youth. And I really love this because we realized a year or two ago that we were missing this very vulnerable group that maybe didn't have kids in the school. Maybe they were very healthy. And they were actually the ones who are most susceptible to going and poaching. So we said, we need to make sure we are engaging every part of society so that it's not just the pastoralists who are most affected by the carnivores, but it's also those who are involved in poaching and other illegal activities that will affect the prey populations, which will then increase the pressure of carnivores on the pastoralists and their livestock. So for us, it really starts with the community and it continues with the community. And one of the things I speak a lot about and actually warn a lot of other conservation organizations about is that this starts with the wildlife in mind, and it actually turns out to be more of a community development focus. And we spend so much time meeting with the local government, meeting with the local communities, distributing the benefits very publicly so that everybody knows what are these benefits, what are they from. It just requires a constant effort because the needs of the community also change. The makeup of the community changes. So every year we have a meeting where we go over the agreement again and we decide, hey, what has changed? What is similar? What is this going to look like? And we listen to the community first and foremost because it really starts and ends with them.
Yeah, thank you. Now, looking at this change, recently CCT has been further developed into CCT Plus. Can you explain the change, these changes, and why these were required, BenJee?
Right. So when we first started the community camera trapping program, we recognized that people were failing to link the presence of wildlife with benefits. And we've seen, and a lot of literature has said that, these positive attitudes and tolerance is critical as like a foundation for community-based conservation. So we said, okay, well, we need to really focus on this very simple project, saying that the wildlife captured in these photos is directly translating to these benefits. And we always said, when we go to the distribution, people say, oh, BenJee, thanks so much. I said, this isn't from BenJee. I say, oh, Lion Landscapes, thank you so much. I said, this isn't even from Lion Landscapes. This is from the wildlife that is in the cameras. And so over time, over the years, people have made this link. And we have seen we do attitude surveys every 5 years. And we've seen that people are making this link and having increased positive attitudes towards wildlife. But then we reached a stage where we said, okay, so we've had a big impact with attitudes and tolerance. Now, what can we do to change behavior, to really motivate the community to do both positive, or to do more positive things that can help to contribute to positive conservation outcomes while reducing those negative things. So what we did is we got together with the community and we said, hey, let's use the community camera trapping as a base. We still really want that to be a part of the conservation programs in the community, but let's talk about how you can get more wildlife or less wildlife. What are the things that are occurring and what are the things that are affecting carnivore mortalities? Why are people retaliating when a lion comes and kills a cow, for example? So we went through a list of things with the community and we created a list of incentives and disincentives. And we start with a base fund. So we start with, let's say, $500 over 3 months. And just have a few examples here. So we have a program of building these wire livestock enclosures. They've been shown to reduce mortality, depredations by 95%. So it's really trying to get at that root cause of retaliatory killings is typically when there are livestock depredations. So we said, okay, for every wire livestock enclosure that's in the community, that is in good condition, we add $5. For not everybody has a wire livestock enclosure. So below in this picture, you can see a traditional livestock enclosure that many are in poor condition. So we said for those that are in good condition, we add $5 to this pot. For the collared lions, that many of them are in areas adjacent to protected areas, and they pass through village land. For every night, they pay a bed night fee. So for every day or night that they're in village land, we add $12 to that fund. Now, there are also negative things that can come from that. And one of the things is snaring. So we do snare sweeps, and for every snare that is found, there's $5 removed from the fund. There are bigger things like poison events and carnivore mortalities, hunting events, and those have really big fines of like, $100 as a disincentive. So what we're looking at is to really make that link now between actions that can affect the wildlife populations and then those benefits that come to the community.
Quite interesting, BenJee, thank you. We'd love to know the progress of CCT Plus in Laikipia landscapes in Kenya and how that's coming along. So I'll turn to you, Gabriel. Gabriel, can you please introduce yourself and your role at Lion Landscapes?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for watching from wherever you're watching from. As Paul did mention, my name's Gabriel Nyausi, the Community Projects Manager for Laikipia, Kenya. I've been born and brought up in Laikipia, Kenya, and I've been in the conservation circle across the country, specifically Laikipia, for over 10 years. And what I do for Lion Landscape is I run the community front for Lion Landscape Laikipia.
Thank you, Gabriel. Now, in contrast to Ruaha Landscapes, communities in Laikipia did not have experience with the community camera trapping and directly started the CCT Plus. How was it like developing the first CCT Plus agreements with the communities in Laikipia?
Thank you, Paul. There are 5 key steps, but before I get to it, there are quite a number of 3 things that we normally check before we walk into a community and start the process. One is quite often these communities live adjacent to either a private conservancy or inside the community conservancy. So the first thing we do is we normally make sure that the private or the community conservancies, we get goodwill from them for us to start a CCT program in that adjacent community. Second thing we check is a bit of data. It's necessary to know how are the predation rates, what's happening. Alongside that is an altitude survey. So we know where the community is when we get started, so that we're able either to check whether we are making progress or not making progress. The third thing that we check before the steps is always there should have been a Lion Extension officer in that specific community that will been there for a period of time so that they already know much more about the organization. So getting into the 5 steps, one is we normally start with a leadership meeting, which we bring the conservancy leaders, national government leaders, county government, Nyumba Kumi, church leaders, a number of and all opinion leaders within that area. The reason for this is for us to get an endorsement that CCT, they think it's a thing that is going to assist, or a program that is going to assist them. Second step is after the leadership have said yes to it, then we move into community sensitization meetings. Every single community is unique in its form. Others are organized in zones, clusters, villages, according to their governance structure. And we normally make sure that we do not bring in an alternative structure, and we follow the structures that are there. So we hold meeting in every cluster, every zone. The number of meetings vary with the community dynamics. It could be between 6 to 10 meetings before you get an official endorsement of the community. The third step is once the community agrees to it, then in a meeting that must have a 2/3 members of that identified area, they nominate a representative into a CCT committee, which will now move that thinking ahead. Very important in the committee, it must be gender balanced, and it must have a fair representation of the whole area, a good spread, so that every single corner has a representative for easy information, dissemination as well as collecting information. So it needs to be a two-way. The fourth one is once we have a committee in place, then we start negotiations in the contract. It's a matter of reading, getting to understand, changing one and two things. This must be done in a manner that the community is updated through meetings so that every step the community is on board. This could also mean a number of committee meetings, again, depending on the dynamics of the committee. And then the very last stage is a stage where the signing of the contract is done, normally done in a public meeting. They must have the right quorum. And there are two very important key pieces that we need to take in mind as we move through the process. One key one is the messaging. The community must understand that the benefits they are getting from is the benefit from the wildlife that they are sharing the land with, and not from Lion Landscape, not from any other conservation person. And in that case, when they're provided with cameras, then there is no single animal that goes in front of the camera, they will get zero benefit. So that needs to be clear from the word go. And the second one is endorsement. If at any of the 5 stages that I mentioned, for example, the leadership says, we don't think this is the right project for us here, I think we'll hit a dead end.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you for that. Briefly talk us through the key achievements of the CCT plans in Laikipia.
Thank you, Paul. I'll have like 5 of them. The first one is already we've got 3 communities with signed contracts up and running. So 3 units within the Laikipia landscape at the moment. Second one, at the moment, we've had 12 individuals who are working with us or has worked with us since we started as camera trap officers. And this is direct revenue that goes into the community. They normally do it on a rotational basis. 4 per unit, 2 every 2 weeks will be working for the cameras. And we've done this to make sure that the benefit is spread across as many individuals as possible. Third, up to the last contract we've had with the community, I've had $1,703 US. And we're looking at an estimate of over $10,000 pumped into the community by the end of this year. These are direct benefits from wildlife that the community have really received. The first one is, so far, we have, with the CCT Plus, I've got a spread in 3 community conservancies across the landscape. That is Kirimon Conservancy, Lower Naibunga, Nanapa Community Conservancy. And we're looking into adding another 2 conservancies before the end of the year. So we're looking at a total of 5 before the close of 2023. The bigger picture is to try and spread to as many communities as possible and seeing a possibility of covering the whole landscape within Laikipia. I know that's quite amorphous, but that's the future, what we're looking into the future. And then the last one, which is not the least, is in terms of behavior change. We have made some progress in that aspect. We've seen one time a couple of months ago where the kids within the Morijo community did rescue a baby eland that was taken to Loisaba for refuge, which is quite a good positive change. Recently, again, we did give a biotree fawn to the same community, and we've seen really an increase in reporting anti-conservation cases, either via the biotree fawn or individuals calling, which are positive, showing that the communities are really changing positively towards conservation.
Very well, that's good to hear. Now, of course, there are challenges that you had to encounter through all this process. What would you say are the main challenges?
In terms of challenges, there are several, but I'm going to mention just about a few. One greatest one is the prolonged drought. This country, and specifically this region, we've got over 3 years without rainfall. And this has really gotten some serious effects to the community in terms of stress levels, movement or migration of both human, domestic animals, and wildlife. We really got difficulties when we started CCT to pull crowds simply because people are not available. A good portion of them has migrated, and being pastoralists, they went in search of water and pasture. And again, the wildlife numbers really went down because of that. So that have been a key challenge when we started this, and really affected. We really had to struggle. Struggle really for it to have up and running. The second one, most of our CCT programs are done in the pastoral setup, and the pastoral setup are male dominant. So engagement and participation of women has been a challenge and remains to be a challenge for us, including even the women in the committees. Their participation is really low. It's an area that's looking forward. We think, yeah, CCT Plus is providing an avenue, Lion Landscape is doing that, but still the level of participation are not up to the levels that we expect. Third, a bit of community politics when it comes especially to employment of camera trap officers. We live in a country where, you know, there's a big challenge in terms of employment, so there's a bit of pull and push, a little bit of the committee, my son, my daughter, and whatever. It's been a challenge really. And again, when trying to agree on the boundaries of a village, Village X want to push the boundary to be inside the CCT kind of area, so a little bit of here and that, or we managed to come out of it. The fourth one is carnivores themselves. Really, the communities across Laikipia in terms of conservation, I think they're at some good level, but carnivores remain really a great challenge because of the human wildlife. They eat cattle, they eat camels, and quite often we've seen retaliatory attacks happening. We lost a leopard recently, some lions, stories of lion getting poisoned and the like. So that one remains a bigger challenge. And the systems up here are not working well in terms of compensation. So remains quite a big challenge. And the fifth one is when we were doing the CCT plus sensitization, most of the people were out because they've migrated and looking after their cattle. They are now getting into their permanent areas, and we are having people getting in who are not aware, and we have to go back now again and do sensitization that we've already done to make sure that every single member of the community, especially the young men and women, get to know what it is, why the cameras are within their land, and need to get it right, because recently we've had one of the cameras vandalized, and we're still following to get to know what exactly happened. But we understand, we feel that it's because there have been people outside, and now they're getting in, they're not aware of what is happening, and that's the reason. And then lastly, but not the least, the amounts of money, which is slightly over 1,000 USD, the feeling of CCT is we want the benefits of wildlife to be felt at a household level. Some of these units or villages or clusters have got up to 200 households. If you really want an impact felt at the household level, you tabulate that in terms of Kenyan shillings, a household will get around 650 Kenyan shillings, which really it can only do maybe 3 or 4 kgs of unga, a kg of sugar. So really it's minimal. So it is a challenge. My wish could be if this could be increased a little bit in the 3 months contract, so that the amount of money you get can now trickle in to be felt at the household level. We've got some remedies for this. We are yet to get there, but we think we need to make the 3 months contract a little bit longer to be 6 months, so that you can get over $2,000. Then that could be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that elaborate explanation, Gabriel. Now, I'll turn to you, BenJee, as the overall Director of Conservation. What would you say are the key achievements of CCT?
Thank you, Paul. So I think I like to look at this through 2 lenses. You know, there is the wildlife. First of all, the impact on wildlife. Catherine, if you could show this slide. So if we look at the slide on the left, this is showing the detections of lions and leopards by the CCT cameras in village land. This is in Ruaha, across, I believe, 13 villages from 2020 to 2022. So we see a steady increase, and that's really just a great sign that both are rising. And then people who report receiving personal benefits from the presence of large carnivores in the area. This is what I said, that there are, that we have the survey that we do every 5 years. The last one was 6 years. We're a bit late because of COVID. But you can see that this number steadily rises. And then when we really put this effort into the CCT Plus and focusing a lot on ensuring these benefits were equitable, we've seen a huge rise. So I think looking at these two side by side, it really is great to see that there is both an impact on the wildlife and then an impact on the perception of benefits from the presence of large carnivores in the area. Can you put the next picture, Catherine? And as I said, the wildlife is all well and good. But I think when you go and ask the communities, the thing they will say the most are the impacts of these benefits on people's lives. And, you know, this picture from the left is from the village of Isele. And this is from just one round of community camera trap benefits. We have desks, we have, notebooks. These are really impactful in communities like Isele, where there are not a lot of NGOs. There's limited funds available from the government. And so these kind of things can have a massive impact on childhood education, which can have impacts that, you know, are for a lifetime for these children. One of the other things that we do is through the healthcare benefits. There's a rural community health insurance through the Tanzanian government. And for about $12, you can enroll a household of up to 6 people. And so we actually do a lottery to choose the households. And this was something that the community really liked, because it's very difficult for people to decide who is deserving, who is not deserving. And many of these people would not go to the health facility because of a $2 registration fee. And so now with this health insurance, they are much more willing to go to the healthcare facility to get treatment. To, you know, a lot of times these are small things that can grow into big problems. And even just knowing that you have these healthcare facilities available for you, I mean, it's been such an impactful program that we have. The feedback is overwhelming, and then it touches 6 people in that household, and every month we have over 100 households that are registered for this community healthcare fund. And it's pretty cool, because even the central community health fund managers in Dodoma, in the capital, saw that there was a massive enrollment in Iringa region, and they actually came and did a feature to say, hey, why is this happening? And they were very happy to see this is linked with wildlife. So I think the way that we can pair conservation with also human development goals, I just think it's a massive achievement that we've had.
Yeah, thank you for that. Indeed, that's a massive achievement. Now, BenJee, Gabriel talked much about the main challenges that they experience. I want to have a general experience, or rather a general feel of what are the main challenges that cuts across the landscapes. What would you say are the main challenges that cuts across the different landscapes?
I think one of the biggest challenges is reminding ourselves that every area is different, and ensuring that we listen to all the communities and not just take what we've done in Kitisi village or in Ruaha and take that straight to Laikipia or take that straight to Salu. Because I think there are a lot of things that I feel go into a successful community camera trap program. And there are things that, like governance, ensuring that, and I keep coming back to it, but that these benefits are equitable, and that people are aware, and that people believe this is really good for our community, good for me as an individual. How do you solve that problem of some people want it at an individual level, some people want it at a community level? How do you, as a conservation organization, play that role as facilitator? And these are things that we've really had to learn and really bring on specialized staff for this, because somebody who's trained in carnivore ecology stepping into a room full of village leadership who are all having varying opinions on how to spend this money and how it can have an impact can be a bit overwhelming. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that we are looking at every community with a pair of fresh ears and eyes, and that we are ensuring that we're learning the lessons and using our experience, but not at the expense of listening to that specific community and understanding how it can be most effective there.
Okay, yeah, thank you, BenJee. So I would want to ask you both, what are some of the fascinating stories about CCT and or CCT Plus, particularly what unexpected things what unexpected things have come out of this? BenJee first.
Sure. So one of my favorite stories happened about 2 years ago, I think. And we were going through the photos, checking the data, and we saw a bunch of baby hyenas at what looked like a hyena den. And I said, wow, this is really cool. I asked our research assistants, how did this happen? And they said, oh, the community camera trap officer, who is selected by the village, he was told by someone in the village that there's a hyena den. And they contacted the community camera trap officer because they're the ones who decide where these cameras go, where is there wildlife in village land. And they called and said, hey, there's this hyena den, you should put the cameras there. And the community camera trap officer said, in the past, that same guy would call and say, hey, there's a hyena den there, we should light it on fire and get rid of these hyenas. So for me, it was just such a rewarding moment where I think it just demonstrated that it made sense and the community had really bought into it. And even the fact that it wasn't something that was like, advertised to us, it was just through checking the data and asking questions to our staff. But to see that, as I said, the community is are the ones that it starts with. And to see that, these attitudes changed from burning out hyena dens to putting a camera trap there so that they could get more community benefits. It was just such a rewarding moment for our whole team to see that, this really, really can work and people can really engage in it.
Indeed, that's interesting. How about you, Gabriel?
Yeah, thanks, BenJee. For me, having been born and brought up in a pastoral setup, I always thought pastoralists know every single species of animal that lives with them across their land. But when we started CCT in Morijo, we normally have a notice board that is placed in a school, sort of a central school. And we normally have monthly beautiful or good photos that we take, we laminate them. And every month we replenish the notice board using such photos. So one day we went into that particular spot. We are having a CCT committee monthly update meeting, and we just placed the photos. And surprisingly, I saw a crowd of around 20 people because there was some other activities going on in the school. And I went very close by to check what was the reason as to why there was such numbers looking at the pictures, and this pastoralist always known animals. And I discovered that a half or more than a half of the people in the notice board have never seen an advert. They only know that it does holes across the land looking for termites. And in the Maasai culture, the name of that animal is called Naishiridama, meaning you'll be very, very lucky to see that animal during the day. So a number of them have never seen an advert in their lives. And I discovered, CCT is really giving lessons to the local community. They're discovering much more species that have been in their land, and they've really known their existence. So really vaccinated me to see that beside the benefits, they're also learning their own environment and getting to understand the species of wildlife that they share the land with.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, BenJee. Now, that brings us to the end of the first part of this session. In this second part, we are going to answer your questions. We can't promise to cover all of them as we may run out of time, but we'll try to do our best to answer these questions. So I'll be picking the questions from our Q&A feature that we ask that we put our questions. So for those who still have questions, you can ask them, just type them in the Q&A feature, and then we'll be answering them as they come. So right on to our first question from Trevor Jones. Can you talk about selecting your unit of community that is in Tanzania? The agreement is at the village level rather than a smaller subset of the community. If so, why is the village the appropriate unit here? And might this vary according to local context? BenJee, I think you can answer that.
Sure. Thanks for that, Trevor. Trevor's our neighbor here in Iringa. So that's a great question. And I think it can vary. I think the reason why we choose at the village level is simply because in Tanzania, I think, like I said, like the whole community can be affected by wildlife, whether you are a farmer or a pastoralist. And we found actually when, as a carnivore focused organization, we initially began focusing just with pastoralists. And this caused a lot of discontent and jealousy and, hey, why are you only focusing with these guys? And, to the point of saying, oh, if there's no benefit for us, maybe I'm a non-pastoralist youth, I'm going to break your camera when I see it, or I'm not going to tell people about this program. So I think it really depends on that makeup of the community. And it could be, if there's like a really, really large village, we could think about splitting it up in sub-villages. If we feel like, we need more representatives, we need more community camera trap officers, more people that are involved. Most of the areas we work in Tanzania are very mixed. So this is something that's different in Laikipia. In some areas there are, all one tribe, and that can have different dynamics. So I do think it really depends on both that, I could say whether they're pastoralist, agro-pastoralist, farmers, whether they're mixed tribes, one tribe. But this comes to that, those community engagement meetings, and you have to ask the community, hey, if there's a program like this, what's the best way for people to be engaged? If there are benefits, what's the best way to distribute these and who to engage, which groups? Because this is something that we also really focus on, is making sure, sometimes we show up places and they say, oh no, it's just the local government needs benefits. And we know that maybe the pastoralists don't have a voice, or the women's groups don't have a voice. So we really have to make sure we push to say, okay, who else is represented here? And we call village-wide meetings. There's so many meetings, but I think they are really important to ensuring that you get that set up right, because it can definitely change depending on the area.
Thank you, BenJee. Another question from Susan Williams. What was the most surprising benefit that a community has requested? That's quite interesting. I don't know who will take that. BenJee?
Surprising benefit that the community has requested. There are a few. So one is a bit of a feel-good story, but it was a bit confusing for me at first. So one of the things that we do is that when the benefits are requested, let's say the education ones, there is a already pre-existing education committee in the village. And so they get together and they write a list of what the benefits should be. And then those lists then go through the local government to make sure that there are layers of accountability and making sure that they are priorities. And so then the lists get to us. So just to give you an idea of kind of how these lists are created. So before the health insurance, we were asked for a gas tank for the local health clinic. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. Like, what do you guys want to use the gas tank for? And initially I was like, oh, they just wanted to cook food. This is kind of not what it should be used for, but like, let's hear what they have to say. They said, no, we actually, the government gave us this fridge, but we don't have any way to power it. And, again, I was like, oh, fridge for, keeping the food cold, the beers cold at night. They said, no, we never have had vaccines in this health clinic, but if we can get this gas and this and a regular power supply for this fridge, then we can have these vaccines, which they have all these different programs. And I was like, wow, like that's perfect. That's exactly the way we would want those benefits to be used. So there are some, I think, that like they're surprising in the way that we see the village really pushing for these benefits that can complement things they're already getting through the government, and then things that are really having a big impact. I think another surprising benefit, which shouldn't be surprising, I guess, but when we first started engaging the youth, we were really unsure. What will these guys ask for? Like, what do young men, what do they want? And how will we deal with if they're like mobile phones or stuff like that? And every youth group requested football or soccer for those North Americans, jerseys, balls, whistles. And I was like, wow, they really want to be like a bit professional about this. And after talking with them, they said, yeah, we have these dirt fields and there's not another sport. And the more we feel like this is like, a bit professional, the less we are going out to the bush to do poaching. And this makes us really feel like we have a team. And this is really an area where the youth kind of unite. And so, it is, like I said, I shouldn't be surprised, but then to hear those layers of what that means to that community group. And it's not just oh, I have this jersey and I look good. These things really go deeper. It's really a nice thing.
Yeah, indeed. It's really a nice thing. Another question, this is again from Trevor Jones. How do you make sure the health benefits are sustainable to the support communities, since the funds may have been limited from time to time? I think because the health benefits are I think we should answer this again, BenJee.
Sure. So this question, I guess, is linked to a broader question that we get a lot about the sustainability of the program. And right now, the program is 100% donor funded. And I think what we are really trying to do at this stage is kind of proof of concept. We know that there are, programs through the national parks. We know that there are payment for environmental services. There are a lot of different schemes that are going on to ensure that there is value for those that are living with wildlife. So I think, we're hoping to show that, and the health benefits is a really good one, because we're looking to show that, hey, if there's money for conservation for communities, this is a way that it has a big impact. It's tempting to just build a block for the school, a new classroom, but I think what we're trying to do is to show not only the effect on the wildlife populations, but those human development goals as well. And just to provide an alternative, there might be places and situations where it's appropriate to build a school block, but there might be many other places where, there are organizations or capacity to be a bit more intensive. And then that money can hopefully be used, for programs like community camera trapping.
Thank you. Another question from Florentino Chiao. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. In terms of human carnivore conflict, have you considered implementing non-lethal mitigation measures such as light and sound? I am aware you mentioned enclosures to keep livestock safe. We'll check this. Gabriel?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it has been done in the Laikipia landscape before, but not by lion landscape. For lion landscape, we are having what we call the predator-proof bombers. Carnivores over time and through my conservation experience really learn lessons. Predator lights no longer work in the Laikipia landscape. The only option that can assist you is you really need to move them probably after 2 days, 3 days. Otherwise, when you hang one position, it will be simple. The hyenas will come straight, get your sheep or goats with the lights on. So really, yes, it is working, but not 100%. It really assisting, have been used before. The best remedy, the best mitigation is to have a predator-proof bomber, of course, with an additional either blinking light or sensor, depends on the specific. So yes, the answer yes, it's been used. To some degree, yes, it's working, but it has its own challenges as well.
Interesting. We move to the next question. This is from an anonymous attendee. What was the challenges in changing the pastoralists' culture when engaging them to construct the local enclosures to the modern ones? Gabriel, can take this.
Yeah, thank you for the anonymous participants. That's a very good question. I don't think there was or there will be any sort of change of the culture by doing so. Remember, the pastoral lands are also undergoing serious stress. The populations are growing up, of people and of domestic animals. They are getting challenges. The imbalance of nature, so that predators get what to feed on in the wild, is getting imbalanced. They have to come for goats and sheep and the like. So really, I don't think there's been any change in terms of culture. Pastoralists really value their stocks, their cattle, their sheep and goats. So anything that will help them deter the predators from getting into their bomas, they most welcome it. The traditional way of doing bomas, which is using twigs and branches and the like, and cannot deter the wildlife from getting in, is no longer working. So I think they really embraced the modern technological ways of doing things. But I think in terms of culture, I myself being a pastoralist, I don't think in any way what we've done have interfered with the cultural way of doing things.
Thank you, Gabriel. Another question from Annabella Hellman. I say, hello, this has been such a great webinar. Thank you, Annabella. How does the CCT program work in conjunction with conflict mitigation efforts? Has there been any friction with wanting highly effective deterrents while also wanting the benefits from large carnivore detections? Thank you. BenJee, can take this.
Thank you, Annabella. So absolutely, everybody wants highly effective deterrence while also having the benefits. And I think that's where, and I think this ties to that, somebody else asked that question, making sure that we do have these kind of conflict mitigation and prevention measures in place. So we have things like lion defenders who reinforce traditional livestock enclosures. We have the predator-proof livestock enclosures. We have lights that we use. We have a canvas livestock enclosure. We have this whole toolkit of kind of prevention and mitigation tools. And it's funny because we can be victims of our own success. If there are too many lions, I think there is a tipping point of tolerance. So the big thing that we've seen is ensuring that there are not any livestock depredations nor human attacks or injuries, which are thankfully extremely rare in our area. But I think people have shown that as long as there is little cost, or that these benefits are enough to endure those costs, people actually have quite positive attitudes towards the wildlife. So I think as long as we are, and this is where I think one of our strengths is that we ensure it's not just saying, protect this wildlife, use your traditional methods. It's like we have this whole toolkit that we use for them to protect their livestock. And then they also get these benefits that are tied to, to the presence of wildlife, and their livestock is protected. And that's kind of this, it's a way that they can view these things together and really accept that, I think, and have that tolerance level be acceptable.
Thank you, BenJee. Another one from Florentino. In regards to CCT, Is there issue with camera theft or tampering? I think this was mentioned, but you can just shed more light.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think one of the most important things that we do is hiring these camera trap officers. So for each village, there are 2 camera trap officers that are selected by the village, and they are no two ways around it. Who usually knows where wildlife is in the village, you know, the wild bush of the village, usually ex-poachers. But it's something that we want to ensure that they have an alternative, and that then suddenly their role goes from being a poacher selling meat for cheap at night to being one of the lead people that is responsible for having these, you know, good placement of the cameras that's then directly related to benefits. So one of their major jobs is every week to go out and to check the cameras and make sure they're safe, but also make sure that they're telling people the cameras are in this area. And especially in areas where we've expanded to, or we've just started, making sure that people know, what are these cameras for? You know, some places use camera traps for enforcement. Some people just are, you know, skittish when they see an electronic device that they don't know. So sometimes we've had them damaged just by curious people. Sometimes we've had them intentionally damaged because of maybe poachers think that they're caught in that camera. But we also emphasize that we do not use it for enforcement, because I think it creates a kind of friction in the community. So for us, we say these are only for the community camera trap program, but that community involvement is critical in ensuring that that loss isn't a huge issue. So we actually have a clause where either 3 months or 6 months will go by before we replace the camera. And we've never, so each community gets 3 cameras, and we've never had a community that has 0 because they've all been stolen or lost. So it is an issue, but I think the communities also take a huge responsibility in ensuring that people know, hey, if we get less wildlife, we get less benefits.
Thank you, BenJee. In the interest of time, I'll just take one last question. This is going to be from Romaric Tigang. Please, what is the best approach to building capacity among local people to reduce human-wildlife conflict? BenJee, you can take that last one again.
Thank you, Romaric. So I think the best approach is just ensuring that people are involved. And I think it can be very challenging in areas where many people do not have secondary education. I think you need to really invest in, you know, having staff that work alongside the community, having roles carved out like the community camera trap officer. They don't need to even be literate. They can, you know, it's a pretty simple job. But they play a key role, and we make sure that people know these people play a key role. So I think it's trying to look, and whether it's the line defenders or line extension officers, we have conflict officers, we have all different roles for people, local people in the village that are based in the village full time, that are appropriate for their education level, that we are continuing to train them in different skills. So we recently digitized all of our data collection, and not everybody was fluent with smartphones. And so it was, you know, training that we had to do. Many of the line defenders and line extension officers aren't totally literate enumerate. So it's a training that we have to do. And these are things that we feel like will pay off in the long run. And, you know, I just can't emphasize enough, making sure that you have those point people in the villages themselves that are representatives when you aren't there, because, you know, ultimately your staff will be spread thin. They'll be in, you know, more urban areas. So making sure that there are local staff there and that you're continuing to build capacity, continuing to give them skills. I think that's really the best way.
Thank you very much, BenJee. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you so much for attending our webinar, Behind the Scenes with Land Landscapes. We hope you learned something useful. If you have any additional questions about our conservation work, please do not hesitate to contact us using the contact details that are going to be displayed on your screen. We'll let you know when we will be having our next webinar, and we hope you will join us. Thank you very much, and goodbye.